Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Centerville Grace podcast, where every single week we try to help you, our church family, dive deeper into the community. It's good to be back with the whole enchilada in a very cold and blustery Ohio. I'm here with.
I'm Dave.
I'm Dusty.
And I'm Tony. It's good to be back. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Good to be back. I was gone for 5 days, and now I'm back. And it was warmer in Washington than it is here, so that's a
Yeah, you
bummer.
went to the state of Washington, right?
The state. I've never been to the state of Washington. Yes.
Tell us about that trip. What did you do?
Yeah, so that was a last minute. One of my friends in our fellowship, his name's Adam Copenhaver. He's a pastor at the Charis Fellowship Church of Mapton, Washington, and Mapton is a very poor, impoverished migrant kind of town where you have a lot of just migrant workers working in the fields, just really. Just tough conditions, and there's a Charis Fellowship planted right in the middle of this very very small town of maybe like 3 blocks, and so he's in charge of the district camp there, the Charis Fellowship district camp, like we do our summer camps. And so the speaker, actually, the original speaker was the president of our Grace College, Drew Flam, and he couldn't do it. And then he passed it on to a professor at Grace College, and then he got sick the week of the camp, and so
Oh,
he
wow.
sent out this text message on Tuesday saying, "Can anybody help?" And I looked at my schedule. I know you were preaching. Some of our boys were going to be gone to Indianapolis to see grandparents. So I talked with Beth, and it seemed like it just was a best time scenario to do this and help out a fellow Charis Fellowship pastor. So on Thursday morning at like 5 o'clock, I got up and got on a plane. And by Thursday afternoon, I was in Mapton, Washington. And we did this. They have a camp there. It's owned by the district of churches there, so it's a Grace Brethren camp or Charis Fellowship camp, and it was just a blast. It was up in the mountains. You could see Mount Rainier, and it was a mix of kids, both Hispanic and white, and very very poor and impoverished to probably middle class. But they all got along really well. They were all really respectful and really appreciative, and we just had a blast. I had to come up with 4 like sermons basically in 24 hours. So I pulled out some stuff from Luke from last year and try to package it in a way for junior hires and high schools to get something out of it. And it was just a great time. We had a lot of fun. They call it snow camp. There's snow because of the mountains, and just really a good time for the soul for me, just a nice way to get away and to reconnect with students and share the gospel and just see God working, on the other side of America. It's great.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Dusty, what about you? How's things going? Anything new and exciting?
No, man, you guys have all been gone, so I've been holding the fort down here. Everybody's been traveling. And
This is what I love most about team ministry. Is there somebody to hold down the fort, right? Like
Right.
I was gone for 2 weeks, anniversary trip in Costa Rica, and I was so thankful to come back to the church family on Sunday and get to be back in the pulpit, and also know that nothing fell apart because you guys are great at what you do.
The team effort. Hey, I remember Dusty being gone in the Dominican Republic too. So,
I cannot wait to get back somewhere warm, especially right now. So it's
that's
coming.
right. That's
We'll
right.
trade off later. I promise.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, the Gracie relationship train has left the station. We did generous the week before, and then this week the R relationships. When you guys think about relationships, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
They're hard. They take a lot of work, but they're good. They're necessary. Those are the 2 things. That's the tension in my head with relationships. I so need them, but they're oftentimes can be hard.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, relationships are everything, right? As much as
Yeah.
as much as it pains me to say it, sometimes they are everything. And if anybody's been married for more than a week, like any good relationship, all of them take work and all of them take a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I think one of the things that strikes me about relationships is how necessary they are and how messy they are, right? Like it's like a necessary mess. And so, um, and I'm probably out of the three of us, I think it's probably safe to say I'm the most relationally driven. Does that feel
Probably.
fair?
Maybe. Yeah, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how much would you say you need relationships? Maybe that's the question to ask.
For me, I would say I'm at a 9.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah. Well, how much do I feel like I need them, or actually the actual reality? I probably feel like I need them far less, but in reality, I need them far more. So I would say if my natural self is answering, I'd probably say 3 or 4. But in reality, my theology and sociology would tell me a 7 or 8.
Yeah, I'd rank myself a 2 for how much I think I need them, and yeah, definitely an 8 or a 9 on how much I know I need them.
Mm-hmm. And that's the tension for us who are like more task oriented doers who'd rather get something done than be with somebody. It's That's the challenge.
Well, it's fun. You see it when you go out, like when you take vacation with people, right? Like
Yeah.
that's my thermometer for how much I value relationships. Like my idea of a vacation is to disappear and not be bothered for a while. Whereas like if you ask my wife, her idea of a vacation is like it's party central. Who all can we invite? Who all can we do it with? And it's just they're both right. Hers is probably more right than mine, but it just shows where our natural inclination lies.
Yep.
I think the tension comes in, right, is that it means that when one person is more, you know, relationally driven than the other is finding that middle ground, which is something I think, Dusty, that you and Nicole do really well, is you guys kind of find that space in the middle that's like, we can people on this day, on this day, on this day, but we're not peopling on this day. And this is how we balance that equation out.
Yeah, it's taken us 18 years and counting to get it at the right balance, but we're feeling pretty good about it these days.
Karen and I are both a little bit extroverted. Like Karen's a social extrovert, and so she recharges her battery by being by herself. But she's always up for the party, like she likes to be in those social environments and engagements.
Yeah.
Where I like to go a little bit more depth in the relationships, and so I'm less likely to want people to come over and hang out, like for no reason at all. But if we're gonna, I like to go deep with people instead. So it's kind of a weird thing. What about you and Beth, Dave?
Yeah. I think both of us are probably more um, introverted in that way, where we probably prefer home. I used to be more extroverted, and then seminary and beyond just has taken me
The,
to an
the church,
introverted place.
the church beat it out of you.
The church beat it out of me. But this past weekend was really nice, where there was no cell phone service, there was no internet, no, like nothing except for just pretty much people to engage and talk with and meet and get to know. And that was really nice. So I didn't have anything to do or worry about other than preaching sermons. But other than that, it was just, hey, I'm just here for the kids. I'm here just to get to know them and love on them and answer any questions they have. So it was just pure relationships this weekend, and that was refreshing actually. So I thought I would be more drained, but I wasn't. So I think I'm an extrovert in some ways, but I just have had so much needed to be an introvert to kind of recharge too. So I don't know.
Well, one
Kind
of
of a
the things
mixed
I
bag.
appreciate about you is that you're inherently curious, right? So you're naturally curious, which relationally translates well, I think. Right? Is that
Absolutely, yeah,
I've
absolutely. That's
I've
why
seen you in the
asking questions.
car or in the golf cart, and you love to ask questions, and it's almost like I've been in a couple of groups where we're like, who's going to sit with Dave? Who's going to answer the questions with Dave? With Dave?
I know I don't want to be like interrogative, but
No,
I
it's
do.
good.
I do like, I don't know. I mean, if we're sitting there, I like to get to know you. I like to figure out who you are and, and that's how I don't know, express I do care about you. I want to know about you.
So let's talk a little about the R and Gracie in terms of how it comes across in the church. This weekend, I had the opportunity to preach on this and was super thankful for it. Loved the deeper dive into relationships. And one of the things that I suggested was that there are three kind of relationships that we're called to that we could see in the text. And the text that I used for the weekend was Acts 2:42 through 47. Are we going to read that today? Do we have that?
I wasn't going to put it up on the screen, but we can certainly read it.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. Why don't you read it?
I don't have it open yet, Dave. So let's you normally read the scripture. I didn't
I'm
have
sorry,
it.
man. I am unprepared for that. I
So
apologize.
you're working from home today.
Yeah,
And the school day, I don't know if our kids are ever going back to school. So like, it's just complicated.
No.
it is.
All right, here we go. Acts 2:42 through 47. It reads like this. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and they had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their home and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And of course, Acts 2 is kind of the first instance of this fellowship of believers. It also shows up again in what is that? Acts 4, I believe, when they kind of the believers share possessions at the end of Act 4. But I took the text and I kind of broke it down into three different groups. So the first group is your tribe or your community. That's the larger part. Then the second group is this idea of a small community. This would be what we would call life group. And then the third group is your disciple making community where you're investing in someone. And I kind of broke down the text that way. I'm curious from you guys, are there any other places in Christian community? Like, am I missing anything in Christian community that is worth noting? There was only one that I came up with. Just
What was
my
that?
one was your non-Christian friends.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so that was
Yeah.
like I didn't really like when I look at the text, this Acts 2 text, it's more for believers, right? And it's not necessarily indicative of the Christian life. But I think if there was one other group of people that we have to be in relationship with, it has to be the non-Christians. We have to figure out where they fit into our circle and what that looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of that balance that when we do disciple making, we share the disciple maker's wheel, and that's the other side of the coin there as far as fellowship and evangelism and our horizontal relationships need to have a balance of both a very strong Christian family roots in that, but also we need to be out in the community as the light and salt for this world. So we are still in this world, and we still need to have relationships in this world. So definitely those need to balance each other well. But yeah, I think what you were talking about, and as I was listening on my way home from Washington, the idea of growing smaller came to my mind as
Oh
far
yeah.
as like, as we grow, we need to grow smaller. So we have our big community, but then we need to grow smaller in our small groups and grow even smaller in our one-on-one relationships. And I think as we grow smaller, we get more relational and more intimate and more the depth continues to grow as we get smaller.
Dust, as you think about the different circles there, what comes to your mind?
I just think it's interesting. Like everything's accounted for. If you're thinking about how do I live the Christian life, from my larger tribe, which is the people like the Acts 2 model of the church, my larger tribe, the small groups, small pockets of friends and community that we have built in, and then the one-to-one discipling relationships, like all that, you could live all that and be a good on the page Christian. And the interesting piece is you're missing a huge part of what Jesus did with his life, which was he was in all of those groups in certain degrees, but then what was his influence back into society, and what's the overall mission of the kingdom within that? So it's almost like, it's not that it's missing a group. It's like that whole circle of the first three lives within the context of now, how do you just be a citizen on the planet doing kingdom work? And what does that necessitate? That necessitates relationships with people outside of our spheres of influence and getting in those circles. Like I think if I am operating a Christian life the way I really should, then I would expect myself, and I haven't always done this, and right now I'm not doing a great job of it, of getting into like, I should be a part of my community. I should be a part of my neighborhood in some way, shape, or form. I should probably be a part of my kids' schools. And I get those PTA phone calls all the time. It's like, oh, it's another meeting that I don't want to go to. It's as integrated as we can get into being a value add for the communities that we inhabit. That should be kind of an overarching mission. And we can still succeed at the tribe, the small group community, the disciple maker relationships, but the context that we succeed in should always have value to the community that we live in, whether the community likes us or not. Like, we should always add value to it and try to live those kingdom values out.
That's I think that's really important, and I think that's something as our tribe, like our Centerville Grace tribe, that's an area that I think we always I struggle with as one of the pastor leader voices, is like, man, how do we help the church think outside of our tribe? How do we get back? How do we plant more missionaries in the communities where they're already in and develop that? Because there's only so much time. Relationships all require time. I'm curious, Dave, how do you balance the tension of time and relationships?
Yeah, for me, I have to be, because I'm a task oriented person more than anything else. I have to be highly intentional about scheduling, making sure I have people scheduled for relationships. Obviously, Sunday morning, that is a time where I need to be focused on just reconnecting with people that I haven't seen, after, within a week or more. So I need to be intentional about just saying hi to as many people as I can, getting into conversations where I need to have them. Throughout the week, I'm doing disciple making, but also having meetings with people that I haven't touched base with for a while, or I find out there's something going on. I just need to, hey, we need to reconnect and go out for lunch or something. So I just need to be intentional, and I need to have those times. But when it comes to my relationships at the family, that's kind of protected in the evenings, where I can go home and just, okay, I got 3 hours before kids have to go to bed. So, hey, let's be very intentional with my relationships and relating to my children and my wife. And that's what Sabbath is for too. I think that's the beauty of Sabbath. I can set down all the tasks and just be purely relational. And that's the balance for my life, I guess.
Dusty, is that something that you struggle with in terms of the timing and the relationship of it all?
Yeah, well, I noticed it when I was writing my blog on generosity or whatever last week, where I realized, as I'm thinking through, that I am intentional with my time, but I'm not always generous with my time. Right.
Mm.
And so for me, it's like I can absolutely put it on the calendar, and like that's not particularly difficult because my wife helps with that. And we kind of talk about that a little bit as a family each week when we're looking at our overall family calendar. We usually have time for, hey, it's a friend night. This is going to be a invite people overnight, the Buckeyes, good old OH, won the
IO.
championship the other night.
Woo!
So we had some people, it was an opportunity to have people over. So like, we're good at doing stuff like that, but that's all planned time. What I'm not great at is being generous with unplanned time, where I can be stingy with free time because I don't get a whole lot of it these days. So what I do get, I try to protect, and I probably overly protect it. So I don't think that's just an area of growth for me, is just being okay with interruption, being okay with like, hey, if somebody comes through the door, even of the church right now, and I'm in the middle of, trying to get some other things done that need to be done today. Hey, can I always make time for that and do it with a good heart and a good attitude? That's where it gets a little difficult for me, I think.
Yeah, for me, I do much better with the smaller groups than I do the larger ones, right? And so if you're not in my like small group area or the people that I'm discipling, I have a hard time connecting, and it's almost like there's just too many. There's too many different groups that I'm a part of that to make the connections. Like I oftentimes long to connect with more people in the church that I don't know, because I still feel like there's a lot of people who I kind of know in the church, but I don't know well. And I'm like, oh man, how do we connect with them? And I'm like, there's just no time, right? It's super frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think being relational means, like, if I had a vision for our church, it's like, when people come in on a Sunday morning, they're looking to relate to people, looking to connect and find commonality, and being fully present with people. And even if you can only do that with a few, that's fine on a Sunday morning. But do that. Like, don't come in just as a an attender where you're going to be listening and singing, but as a relator. Who can I relate to that I don't know yet? And so I think that's the word relate. I'm trying to like dig a little bit deeper. What does that mean? Relationships comes from the word relate. What does it mean to relate to people? And I think it's finding commonality, finding things that you can get connected. Like, that's, you're just those common connections where that grows the trust, and the relationship then can grow and flourish that way.
Yeah, it's good. I love watching the church family come into church and then hug it out or give that connect with each other. There's some juice there that I think is just really enjoyable to see. And one of the guys that I disciple, he sits in the same spot, and Tim O'Neill and his family kind of sit in front of him. And so Dan and Heather sit in the same spot. So every time they sit there, Tim and Wendy sit in front of them. And so they're always connecting. And I'm like, oh, it's like, I love watching him get more connected than to just me in the church. And, they become
Absolutely. Yeah.
friends, and they're holding, all of a sudden somebody else is holding your baby. And it's like, man, that's my prayer for everyone in the church, that if you had a baby, if you wanted one, there was somebody in the church you would trust to hold it.
Yep. That's exactly right. Yep. It's that root system that I talk about, those micro connections, that root system. The more we can get that, I think the more we can flourish and thrive as a church family. Because we're going to have storms, we're going to have tough times, and if we're not connected and rooted that way, we're going to lose. It's just not going to be good.
Yeah, one of the things I appreciate about the text in Acts 2 is this idea of for the common good, common mission. I love the idea of like having a tribe that's unified in what we're for, and putting I mentioned this in the sermon, putting a kind of our sword on the table for these things. Um, and in our particular community, that happens to be disciple making. And I just, for me, I want, my prayer is that people are as excited about disciple making as I think the three of us are, and the whole church team and the elders, and like, this is what we're here for. This is what we're called to do. We feel like it's our identifying factor.
Yeah, because to us, like, that's how the gospel's, I think, best spread. And I think that's how Jesus taught and modeled. It wasn't through classrooms. It wasn't through. I mean, he did some preaching and sermons, but for the most part, he spent most of his time in relationships, and that's how his teaching got passed on. That's how his life got passed on, and that's how ultimately I think the gospel is best spread is through relationships. So if we can do that, and through disciple making that way, relational disciple making, I think that's where the juice is.
Yeah, I'm curious for you guys. Do you think there's been a shift in that over the years? Because I was just thinking through this the other day. Was at some point, I think church, like the church that operated in Acts 2 that Tony read a little bit ago, was very much a lifestyle kind of church, right? This was a picture of the life that the disciples of Jesus were living, which was very fully integrated into everything that they did. Whereas I think now we view church as much more of an event. It's a Sunday morning thing. It's a Sunday morning plus whenever a youth group happens to be, plus whenever a small group of men happens to meet, or maybe plus my disciple making meetings. Like, what would it look like? I guess maybe my question back to you guys of maybe when did that happen? Why did that happen? And how do we fix that going forward to make people think that being a Christian is not just something that we come to, but it's a lifestyle that we actively embody?
Yeah, I would say it started probably in the maybe 80s, 90s, and the church growth model of making it more about outsiders than insiders. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, but I'm just saying like we shifted and we tried to do more of events and more of an outreach with our Sunday morning services. And so I think that led to a feeling of, yeah, this is more of something I come to, not something I'm a part of throughout the week. And that's always the tension, the balance of inward facing versus outward facing. And so when you shift from inward to outward, there is a potential to lose that inward family feel of this is something that we are part of, that we are doing all week long. And I think that's the tension that we're trying to manage as well too, because we do want to be an outward facing church where we are always, about the mission of reaching the lost people and making disciples who make disciples. But we can't forget either that we are a family here, that we need to it's not just an event that we come to, but we need to make this a lifestyle kind of church is a lifestyle where we're doing life together throughout the week, not just an hour of the week. So that is the challenge that we are always facing, I think, and from the 80s and onward, or maybe earlier, but I think that's when we went to the mega church seeker service model for a lot of churches. I think that's where things began to really change.
That's so funny that you said the 80s. I was actually thinking when we put pews in.
Okay.
When we went to a model of we're sitting in rows instead of having the flexibility to stand or move around or be in circles, is kind of a phrase that we use a lot around grace. And I also think that there's a direct correlation between the higher that we elevated the pulpit, the less connected the people became. When it became, come listen to someone like me pontificate, it started doing a hatchet jobs on a lot of the relationships, because it just became a power struggle. So I was going a little bit older church,
Yeah, you got a lot older, so
a lot
I'm
older.
trying to think when that was going to be before
It has to
pews.
be like 18 something, right? Don't you think?
Oh, way before that. I mean, think of the medieval church. There was pews and high preaching and all that. So you got to
Yeah,
go back.
that's the frame where I think we lost it.
Yeah, we got to go back way back. So like when the Romans adopted Christianity and things got really
Yeah, the Romans messed everything up. They put all that structure and order in it, and it was bad.
yeah. So we'll go there, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think the family terminology is interesting, and I think that's really appropriate because if you get invited to a family event, say it's Thanksgiving, you're planning Thanksgiving with the family, you're not really asking people, hey, just show up and I've got everything provided. You're usually like kind of divvying out, hey, we're all a family. Why don't you bring this? I'll bring this. We'll meet here. I'll share my place this time. Next year, we'll do it at your place. And there's this very shared experience. We're all responsible for a piece of it to make this thing happen, versus the difference of, hey, if you get invited to a party and somebody's there to serve you and you're not in the family, it's like, hey, I'm coming in with the expectation I'm going to sit and I'm going to be served and I'm here as a guest. And that's kind of the difference I see in a lot of churches, is maybe we just need to bring back more of that family feel, because in those families everybody feels like they have a little bit of ownership of it, therefore everybody serves a little bit, everybody's a piece of it on the internal side, versus something we just invite people to come and attend, and then the expectation is I am here to observe while you give me your best shot and I'll let you know if I like it. I'll give it a scale of 1 to 10, and let you know where to improve.
It's good.
Yeah, I think that's a big word, that idea of sharing. When I come in and I can share something, right? And so I'm sharing myself, I'm sharing a story, I'm, something that you are part of this, not just getting something or expecting something from somebody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think maybe that's one of the questions that all of us have to wrestle with is what am I sharing in the bodies that I find myself in, or what am I sharing in the community? What am I giving to? How am I doing it? And understanding that it may not be, it's not always a perfect season.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's relationships, give and take. You probably heard that, right? Give and take, give and take. So you need a give and a take.
That's good. So speaking of relationships, I want to make sure that we talk about anything coming up in the church. Dusty, Dave, any thoughts on upcoming events that we need to make sure the church family knows that they're invited to as our family?
I mean, yeah, I'd say right off the bat, it was great because we got a lot of response from people joining life groups, or at least expressing interest in joining a life group after Sunday. So, I'm actually in the process right now. I've got this whole stack of papers I've been working on of people that have interest and making sure to point them in the right direction to get involved in that more relational community. So that was super encouraging from Sunday. So, I mean, to everybody that did that, thanks. But if you didn't have a chance to do that, or if you haven't filled it out, you can go to centervillegrace.org/life groups and you can sign up right there, and I'll get you hooked up. But aside from that, a first place to get connected into community and into those relationships, I really think is Discover Grace. And I don't think it matters, and we haven't really said this a whole lot, but it doesn't matter if you've been in the church for a long time. I still think it's really worth going through because that's an 8 to 12 week chunk that we get to take people through personally. Pastor Dave leads the first 4 weeks. We take over after that point and kind of do more of this, turn it into a little bit of a life group for a while and just really talk about the values we espouse as a church and what we want people to be a part of, the community we're inviting them into, what those responsibilities are, what we expect from them, what they should expect from us, and how we hold each other accountable. And we've really seen the people that have come out of those Discover Grace groups have really been kind of standard bearers for us for representing who a Gracie really is as we go through this series. So I can't encourage enough to get involved in that. And that's going to kick off on February 16th. So I'm working on a website for that for signups as well. They're not open, but they'll be opening up this week. And we'll share that as well. It'll probably be centervillegrace.org/discover grace. Spoiler alert. But yeah.
Yeah, I also, if you are struggling to connect in the community, and it's connected to where your marriage is, I can't speak highly enough about a weekend to remember, the marriage conference that is February 21st through the 23rd. So if you want to connect with there, go to centervillegrace.org/next steps. It's on the website there, and it's a, you got to, every relationship needs a little maintenance every now and then. So I know my marriage isn't any different. I know all you guys believe in that fully.
Yep. And we're going to be at the March one. So there's a February and a March one. March is in Indianapolis. February is in Cincinnati, but we'll be in the Indy March one. That just works out for us with grandparents watching the kids who live in Indianapolis. So it helps.
That's good. Good. Closing thoughts, guys?
I mean,
no matter who you are, I think we can all try to be a little bit more relational. I think that's the goal. Wherever, if you're super relational, great. But I think all of us can probably work on it to some degree, and just be that intentional about moving towards people and connecting with them and getting to know more names and faces. This is how we are going to thrive and be rooted in our church world.
Yeah, I'd add on to that and just say, man, if you really want to be in a relationship, whether it's with somebody, whether it's somebody in the church, outside of the church, just understand that requires you bringing something to the table. So don't be stingy with the way that God made you, and just let other people in on truly get in a relationship with people. Bring it to the table.
Amen. Amen. And if you don't know where to start, don't hesitate to reach out to any one of the three of us. We're happy to walk alongside you to make sure that no one walks alone. We really do believe that. And that's our prayer. It's our prayer. So that's our podcast for today, friends. As always, we're embarrassingly easy to get the hold of. If you need anything from us, don't hesitate to let us know. The highest compliment you can give us, share this podcast with a friend, maybe somebody who you want to be in a relationship with. Till next time, no one walks alone.